Hey, this is Mike Whitfield. I am in Las Vegas with the man Romans. And we're going to talk about a couple things. One, we're going to talk about finishers, which I'm a big fan of, as you know. And then we'll talk about intermittent fasting. And we're going to talk about hormonal training, which I don't talk a whole lot about, but Roman knows all about that. So,
Good stuff.
oh yeah, absolutely. All right, finishers. Do you use them in your programs? And when you do, when do you like to implement them?
I don't generally write them into my programs. For me, I actually wrote a blog post on this a couple of years ago. Finishers are sort of like a fun thing that I encourage my clients to use when they are, when maybe they feel like they've got a little bit left at the end of a workout. And I always encourage them to use them as an opportunity to reinforce movement patterns that maybe they're struggling with on a given exercise. So for example, if you are struggling with pull-ups, then maybe have a pull-up finisher at the end of your, let's say a leg workout, because obviously the muscles are fresh. And then from there, you can actually become more efficient at pull-ups, because now if you're doing this 2 or 3 times a week, then you're obviously going to get stronger and more efficient in the movement. So it's really something that can be fun, and it's a way to challenge yourself. So that's how I've always approached it, which is not nearly as structured as you've done, which is something that is becoming more popular now, and I really like it.
Very cool, very cool. Now, regarding intermittent fasting, now I use a kind of a 24-hour fasting protocol, which I learned from Brad Pilon, but I understand that you have a variety of methods. What do you like to use with your clients?
Well, it really depends on what they need and what their schedule is like. So in a perfect world, what I like to encourage people to do is use a synthesis of various methods. Okay? So if you look at the most popular styles of intermittent fasting, you've got a 24-hour fast, which is popularized by Brad Pilon and Eat. You have got like a 20-hour daily fast with one large meal at the end of the day, which is more akin to the warrior diet. And then you have a shorter daily fast of 16 hours with an 8-hour feeding window, and that is popularized by Martin Birkin at leangains.com. My own first exposure to intermittent fasting was when I started to fast for a full day after a cheat day, and it's like the feast fast model. And really, that came about because after a full cheat day, on let's say a Sunday, where I eat wings and burgers when I was watching football, I would wake up one day and I just didn't want anything to do with food, so my first meal would actually be breakfast Tuesday morning. And as intermittent fasting has become more popular, what I started to do was look at what these experts are doing and why it was effective. And while I think any one of those methods is effective for people en masse, what I have decided for myself is that based around my schedule, I took all of these things and I created a schedule that is essentially a synthesis of all of the best of each of those methods that allowed me to have that cheat day and that fast day, and that allowed me to create a system for myself where I could be very productive, eat fewer meals, and lose fat. And so what I created then is a 7-day intermittent fasting cycle, which uses all of the best methods from all of the best people. So while I'm not necessarily responsible for coming up with any of these things independently, this synthesis is my intermittent fasting magnum opus, and it's become really, really popular. It was featured in Tim Ferriss's holiday app, which was really cool. And I think that it's going to resonate with a lot of people because there's variety there, and I think that's what really helps people stick to things. It's what made programs like Final Phase Fat Loss and the Extreme Fat Loss Diet very popular, because people were really excited to do this one thing for this one day and then do something different the next day. So it's been really cool. We've seen a really good response.
Awesome. And it beats the usual 5 to 6 meals a day to metabolism going and that kind of thing, which I gave up a couple of years ago. So that's pretty cool. It sounds a lot more convenient. Let's talk about some trouble spots.
Yeah.
We're talking, what would you do for somebody that say that they have a little bit of the love handles going on, or the guys struggle with the man boobs?
Sure.
What's your solution to that?
Okay, so this is something that I've talked a lot about over the past couple of years, and my first exposure to that, I always like to give people credit. My first exposure to this was Charles Coltrane, and in his BioSay course, he talks a lot about the hormonal reasons that people store fat locally. And when you're looking at love handles, really what you're looking at is people who have trouble with insulin management. And so if you are storing the pejorative amount of your fat in your love handles, then it stands to reason that you've got a problem with managing insulin. And so really what we need to do, as you obviously diet and do correct training, you want to start to take the right steps to correct that insulin problem. And so through training, really what we find is that if you start to increase IGF-1, it can have sort of a counterbalancing effect where now you're going to start to manage insulin better. And in addition to that, obviously we want to reduce carbs so that we have less insulin spikes. And also things like just increasing fish oil will have a great impact on insulin sensitivity, and also and also stuff like cinnamon, particularly Saigon cinnamon, will have an impact on insulin sensitivity. So there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of training, nutrition, and supplementation to do that. Regarding man boobs, what we're seeing is that that's, in guys in particular, that's guys who have higher than average estrogen. And obviously the way to offset that is to increase testosterone. And there's tons of ways to do that, herbs like tribulus, but through the training effect, I have found that density training, where you're trying to do more work in less with the same amount of time, is the most effective thing to do there. And that was, that was what I was doing for about 6 years with my clients, and then a coalition of that became plant-based fat loss. And but really the reason I called it that was that I found that as people are trying to lose the last 5 to 10 pounds, when you're fat, you're kind of fat all over. But when you've lost a ton of weight, you're gonna, if you only have 10 pounds to lose, you're gonna hold it in areas that are dictated by your hormones. So, if I only have 10 more pounds to lose because I have trouble with insulin, all 10 pounds are going to be right around my love handles. Whereas, a woman, the last 10 pounds are going to be her typical diet because there might be an estrogen management there. So those last few pounds are almost always hormonally dependent.
Very cool, very cool. And do you find it that it's one way to really say that intermittent fasting along with kind of hormonal training, do you like to put those together in a synergistic kind of way to, for its,
absolutely. One of the reasons that IAP is so effective is because it helps you manage insulin because you're eating less frequently, so you don't have those insulin spikes. But also because the production and secretion of growth hormone is greatest during periods when you're fasting. So if you look at the way growth hormone affects other hormones like cortisol, which is in part responsible for belly fat storage, if you can find a way to not only extend the period of growth hormone secretion through fasting, but also to increase it through certain aspects of training, like producing more lactic acid, then what you're actually going to do is now you're extending the period of growth hormone secretion while you're secreting even more. And so you get to maximize and optimize these effects. And so it's been really, really effective to pair those together. And that's what I've been working on more recently. So, there's a lot of research with each of these independent things, but there's no research on the two of them together. And so while unfortunately I can't afford to conduct a study at a university, what I'd really like to do is just help people who are struggling with their diet use intermittent fasting to be more effective, and people who are struggling with these hormonal challenges. And I think that's, most people fall into those categories. So this should be something that helps people not only lose fat, but helps them manage their weight loss over the long term. And that's why we're calling it Fat Loss Forever. Because I think that this isn't a diet or a training program, but the nutrition in particular is a way of eating that you can carry on for the rest of your life and never have to worry about eating the fat.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Very cool. Well, again, Roman, I appreciate your time. Again, this is Mike Whitfield with CraigTraining.com and WorkoutFinishers.com, and I'm with my man Roman.
Thanks very much, Mike.
Appreciate it.
Take care.